What do you think of when I say babies?
Well, I'm an atheist, so an immoral source of protein? An atheist eating babies joke might be in poor taste, but with the right seasoning, things get just awkward enough for me to need the intro to save my because, you know, with the right balance of ranch and oregano and... Oh, the intro played. Huh. Okay, well, this is going to be weird in the edit. Are you coming to save me from the awkwardness? Forget you saw anything. This is the part where I actually have to, like, beg for subscribers and for notification bell stuff. That's the YouTube environment we live in. Okay, well, there's a thing right there to remind you to do that. Okay, done. Fan art. So first of all, we have a crest of the channel by Oz. And then we have a Dark Magician Girl Suris by Jack and Quill, because of course we do. And finally, we have various Suris trolls from... As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions, and let's get right into the video.
What do you think of when I say babies? Little fingers and toes? Happy gurgles and giggles? But we have been sold the story that the most innocent members of our society are stealing our freedom.
Excuse me, what?
Mothers everywhere have been told to turn on the children growing within their wombs and have been guided to take their lives.
Okay. Classically Abby, sister of Ben Shapiro, conservative role model for all of us. Who possibly could be telling these people to murder their children? That's so horrible.
Today is the day where we stand up and say, we are pro-life.
Oh, it's just about abortion? That's it? That's all this is? This is just about abortion? Okay, never mind. I thought we were actually talking about, like, people legitimately trying to kill kids, because that would have been something worth talking about.
There's a lot of talk about abortion today. My body, my choice, and Shout Your Abortion have become calling cards for the pro-choice movement. This movement has created a narrative in which infants are the thieves of our futures and should be done away with when inconvenient.
No, it's not about inconvenience. That is one aspect of that conversation. The whole conversation is that because it is your body and no one has the right to your body, then you should not be forced to give up any organ of your body for any amount of time to any person, period, regardless of the stage of life they're in. This exact same conversation comes up in the argument from the violinist, wherein a person has to give up an organ to a famous violinist because they're a nobody, and the famous violinist enriches the lives of everyone around them. And they argued that they shouldn't have to give up an organ to the violinist just so they can survive. And the counter to that is that the organ, something like a kidney, is something that won't kill them. It will just inconvenience them. The conclusion is that if you don't give up your organ to the violinist, that should not be considered murder, nor should you be considered legally responsible for the life of the violinist simply because you did not give up your organ. Because you are the one that has the right to your body, no one else. This counts towards fetuses as well, even if we grant them full personhood from the moment they're conceived. They are no more or less a person in this argument than the violinist. However, they are owed the usage of the body no more or less than the violinist either. I also like the subtle language thing you did there, where you mentioned an infant, but we don't perform abortions on infants. We perform abortions on zygotes, on fetuses. Infants are already born. Even if you try to fight back with the notion that fetus or zygote is dehumanizing, my counter would be that I already addressed this with the violinist argument. It doesn't matter if you grant personhood to the infant or not. No matter how much personhood you grant to a fetus, a zygote, an infant, a baby, whatever definition you want to use, you still end up with the problem, it does not deserve the rights to your body. You have the choice in that matter, no one else.
They've used words that are meant to make us feel more comfortable when talking about taking the life of an innocent child in its mother's womb. They've coddled us into hearing the word abortion and not really listening to what it means.
No, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what an abortion is and knows what it means.
They say it's just a fetus, so we think of it as something other than a baby.
That's because it is something other than a baby. It cannot think, it cannot feel, it cannot have experiences. All of the things that we definitionally use to call people human do not apply to that zygote yet. And I don't think I have to keep on reiterating the fact that even if they did, that doesn't grant it the rights to someone else's body.
They call it an abortion, or a termination, so they can avoid saying it's the taking of human life.
Not every technical term exists just to avoid saying something else. To use your argument in the exact same way, they call it a murder, or they call it a homicide, to avoid saying what it really is. The taking of another human life. Like I said before, trust me, when you say abortion, everybody knows what's happening. It's not an attempt to dehumanize.
A baby's life begins at fertilization. The sperm and the egg meet and immediately begin to create a new little human. A baby's heartbeat begins at 3 weeks.
And I would hope that the existence of beating heart cadavers would show you why a heartbeat is not a good inclination of when life begins.
At 3 weeks, its DNA has defined its eye color, its height, every inch of its appearance. The pro-choice movement will tell you that it doesn't look like a baby.
Because it doesn't.
But it already has a separate and distinct DNA from its mother.
Your point was about how the baby looks? DNA doesn't really matter to that argument. Every organism has DNA, sentient or not. Having separate DNA from me isn't an argument. A banana has separate DNA from me. If your point is going to be that the DNA has predetermined how this being is going to look, so? Does looking different than the mom suddenly mean that you're going to grant rights over her body? Because I can go ahead and tell you right now, there are a lot of sex offenders who would love that argument.
The pro-choice movement will tell you it doesn't look like a baby, but its heartbeat has already begun. The pro-choice movement will tell you it doesn't look like a baby, but it is one.
No. Categorically, you have a zygote, which is when it's a couple of cells, and then you'll have an embryo up until about 9 or 11 weeks, then you'll have a fetus, and then eventually it'll be born and you'll have a baby.
Most women don't even know they're pregnant when their unborn child's heart has begun to beat.
And hopefully you can see why that is an argument in favor of abortion instead of against abortion, especially when people try to put arbitrary limits on where an abortion can actually take place. Your inability to know you're pregnant means you might have already started things like a new career or started other aspects of your life that a child might actually impede. Or you might be in a toxic relationship who's going to try to keep you in the relationship using the child as a scapegoat, and you might not know any of this until several weeks into the pregnancy. I hope you understand that you basically just gave everyone else an argument against you, gift-wrapped.
At 9 weeks, a baby is sucking its thumb. Think about it like this. More than 60 million American children have been aborted since 1973.
So then we've got almost 70 million opportunities for women to better themselves or leave their abusers, depending on the situation. Still not seeing how this is supposed to sway me.
As a young woman in 2020, you have been told that abortion should always be an option. Federal law allows infants to be aborted, terminated, murdered, up until the moment of birth.
And what Abby's not telling you is about the fact that every single state has the ability to restrict abortions within their own territories. In fact, in many states, there is mandatory ultrasound laws, which force you to see your fetus in an ultrasound first, basically as an attempt as an emotional plea against you. It's manipulation. There are several states that have mandatory abortion counseling, and there's also many states that have mandatory waiting periods, because terminating something out of your body is already going to be traumatizing enough when you're trying to humanize it within you. Why not make that even more traumatizing and more damaging for the person?
That means a baby will be injected with a substance that causes cardiac arrest, as the mother is induced to deliver her stillborn baby, so the child simply isn't inconvenient. Human lives are not inconvenient.
I feel as though your existence is a counter-argument to the claim that no human life is inconvenient.
As a young woman in 2020, you've been told that you get to choose what happens to your body. That's true. You get to choose what happens with your body, but you don't get to choose what happens with someone else's body.
Right, but the fetus exists within your body, and you get to choose how much of your body is used. It's not your fault that the fetus can't survive outside of your body, just like it's not your fault if the violinist can't survive without your kidney. The fetus does not have a right to your body. The violinist does not have a right to your kidney.
That little baby with DNA that's been separate from your own since conception. As a young woman in 2020, you've been told that pregnancy is hard enough to warrant the killing of your own child. Pregnancy can be difficult, Tearing a baby from the warmth of its mother's womb in pieces is worse.
Right, but by my estimation, it's worse to rip away somebody's rights to their own body, taking away their autonomy and their integrity. Like, abortion may not be a good thing. This may not be a thing that people should be seeking out as the best alternative to pregnancy. But currently, it is the best alternative in many cases. Cases such as spousal abuse, cases such as rape, cases such as incest, cases such as wanting to escape generational poverty, cases such as not wanting to have to put a child through the abusive adoption system we have in America right now. Currently, the material conditions do not exist for us to remove abortion out of the conundrum. This is a problem that I have with a lot of conservative positions. Many of them rest on something called the just world hypothesis. But the thing is that we don't live in a just world. Under the just world hypothesis, there should be nothing that says that the child should not be able to live a perfectly happy life after conception. But there are several factors that make this not a just situation. I listed out a few already, but if you desperately need a more robust attempt at talking about this, I'll have a link to my response to Ashton Birdie in the description below, where I go over these arguments in detail.
Just because a baby in the womb can't speak for itself doesn't mean we have the right to take its life before it's born. Imagine not being able to speak as the decision of your life or death was decided without your consent, merely because you existed at all.
You could make the same flaccid argument about people who are stuck in a vegetative state who are on life support. So, in the system that you're proposing, we have the rights of the mother, the rights to her body, the rights to her life, and the rights to the infant, the right to the infant's body, and the rights to its life. You have to grant the infant the extra right of the mother's body in this scenario, stripping the mother of the right to her body. I don't want to live in a system that says that people can lose the rights to their body simply because they happen to become a victim of rape, or simply because their spouse decided to puncture the condom without them knowing, or because their family peer pressured them into having a child that they ultimately realized they didn't want nor were they ready for. But if you're going to continue spouting apologia for abusive systems, then channels like mine are going to continue talking about you, and continue watching you get ratioed.
But instead of being taught to protect our most vulnerable, we are told to destroy them. As a young woman in 2020, you have been told that it's not a baby at all. It's just a bundle of cells, or worse, a parasite.
Considering that a parasite is any organism that lives on or in a host and gets its food from and at the expense of the host, yeah, that would be what a fetus is.
But here's the thing. You are its mother. You are growing another person inside of you who depends on your love and care to grow into a little person. And babies do feel pain, at the latest by 20 weeks, but some studies show as early as 12 weeks.
Bet it would have been really inconvenient for you to actually link any of those studies in your description.
As a young woman in 2020, you have been told that being pro-life is anti-woman. Nothing could be further from the truth. You are pro-woman's rights.
Yeah, if the only woman's rights you care about is the right to be biologically enslaved by the happenstances of your birth, then yeah, I guess, in a weird, twisted kind of way.
And that includes the rights of unborn women everywhere.
I can't believe you actually said that, thinking that was a good point. Well, by that argument, fuck the male fetuses, I guess. Yeetus the fetus!
Today, women are misled into choosing their desires over the very lives of their unborn children.
Like the desire to their own bodily rights?
To lead a life constantly pursuing pleasure after pleasure as they constantly grow more and more fleeting.
I mean, if that's what somebody else wants to do with their life, who are you to tell them otherwise? That'd be my question. Like, I'm no woman, but if I want to just sit here and play video games till I die, then why the fuck not?
To live in the perpetual present with no meaning in sight, and to sacrifice the inestimable value of human life for empty freedom.
Empty freedom? Oh boy, that doesn't sound very American of you. In fact, that almost sounds authoritarian.
There is no worse tragedy for mother and child. When a woman fights her own instincts and instead listens to those who tell her to choose her desires over her own child, she has been victimized into leaving behind the role she was born to play.
You know, maybe some people don't want to be categorized into predestined roles just because of the way they were born. Some people want to actually do what they personally want with their lives and want to achieve their own personal wants and desires, instead of the desires that people like you would want to impose on them. You're the one who's telling people that they're victims, when all that's really happening is that the world around you is accepting the fact that people don't have to be born into predestined roles, be born into things like biological slavery, and that upsets you. You don't like the fact that the world isn't turning as conservative utopia as you'd like it. At the end of the day, you're not actually fighting for children's rights or anything like that. You're fighting so that you can live in a world where people like you are controlled more. You're being pro-authoritarian control, as long as the people being controlled are female.
Mother. Not all abortion supporters have this mentality, but it pervades the arguments about how abortion is necessary to women's empowerment and fulfillment. And are there situations where bearing a child is hard? Terrifying? Of course. But the pro-choice movement believes you should end a baby's life because of it.
No, the pro-choice movement doesn't say that you should end a baby's life because of something. The pro-choice movement, as is stated by the name of the movement, is about having the ability to choose whether that is right for you. Not everybody in a hard pregnancy is going to decide to have an abortion. Some may decide to have an adoption. Some people may decide to carry to term regardless of any issues that they may cause with their health. The point of the pro-choice movement is to allow women to be empowered to make that choice for themselves, not people like you making the choice for them and saying, no, you have to engage in your biological imperative. Like I said before, the problem is that you're engaging in a pro-control narrative. You're not actually arguing for rights. You're using emotional manipulation in an effort to tell people that they need to basically be biological slaves. Because it's convenient for you to live in a world where everybody has to do that, for some reason.
There are so many resources to help women through pregnancy and single motherhood. There are so many families waiting to adopt a child if keeping the baby isn't right for you. And here's the thing. The pro-choice movement has come up with a million ways to justify abortion. It can't feel pain yet. It's not a human, it's a fetus. I can't afford to raise a child. Pregnancy is too hard. I want to live a normal life, and having a baby right now just wouldn't work for me. If anyone tried to use this reasoning to kill an adult, we'd call it murder.
Again, this is you operating under the just world hypothesis. Yes, there are adoption agencies ready to take children. However, those adoption agencies do not always get children into suitable parental hands, and there are many children who end up going through the system and growing up in orphanages as a result of this. Basically, you're being pro-birth, but you're not being pro-quality of anyone's life. Another issue where you're working within the just world hypothesis is you're trying to argue that all women should have the ability to carry to term. Not all women have the ability to, not all women want to. Some are in financial situations where they cannot afford to carry a baby to term because doing so would put them out of their ability to stay at their jobs. If you can create a society where we have a perfect adoption system, where all parents are vetted and none of them are abusive and there's no such thing as an orphanage anymore, and you can create a system where on top of that we have the ability to remove a zygote from any potential mother, whether it's in the stage of a zygote, a fetus, or an embryo, and let it grow in a vat and be perfectly healthy with no complications whatsoever, then yeah, maybe you'd be able to move me into being anti-abortion, because we'd have the ability to move this potential child into a safe environment that does not come at the cost of the mother's body, and also this child can be put into an adoption agency if the mother is not able to take care of the child, and that adoption agency would be good enough and robust enough to take care of all the child's needs and make sure it gets into a home. But we don't live in that world. We don't live in a just world. This is the problem with the just world hypothesis. If we lived in this magical, fanciful just world, then sure, I would be on your side fighting 100%, because yeah, I can grant personhood to a fetus. My problem is that even when the fetus is a person, it does not gain those extra rights to someone's body. And unfortunately, we do not currently live in this utopian world where we can take abortion off the table for the great majority of potential parents. How about instead of arguing in favor of control of women's bodies, you start arguing in favor of creating the utopian environment where we can abolish abortion together? But you're not going to do that because it's a whole lot harder to create an entirely new world where these rights can actually be observed than it is to simply strip women of the rights they currently have.
There's only one way to stop the murder of unborn children: being pro-life.
There's a better way. You can fight for the construction of the utopian world that allows you to have the environment that you're trying to push for. You can try to push for the development of better technologies in the fields of artificial womb. You can try to push for the reform of adoption agencies and the reform of orphanages, and you can try to push for better systems of vetting parents and better ways of checking in and more funding to all of these agencies so that we can make sure that children are properly protected and cared for. That's a proper way to be pro-life. Be pro-life. Not just pro-birth. Try to do everything in your power to increase the quality of life of the mother and also the child. But that's not the system you're advocating for. You're advocating for a system that only has one answer to anything, and that is control. Your answer to women not being able to give birth or women not being in a position to have children is to just tell them to have the child anyway. Tell them to revoke any control of their body that they potentially have right here and now. You people are not pro-life. You're pro-biological slavery. You're pro-forced birth. You're pro-control over other people's bodies. If you are so pro-life that you think women should have to be forced to carry their children to term, then sacrifice your life on the pyre of every potential baby. Every single time a woman has a zygote and they are thinking of getting rid of it, become a surrogate mother. If a woman is about to give birth but doesn't want to have the baby at all, adopt it yourself. If you are truly pro-life, then instead of policing other people's lives, why don't you try taking an active part in making the world a better place? I know that's terribly inconvenient for you. It's really difficult to do that instead. But unless you're here willing to offer your body up for everybody's use here and give up your own bodily rights, then maybe you shouldn't be arguing that other people should be getting rid of their bodily rights. But that's as much of that video as I can personally stand, and most of you in my audience probably can't stand much more either, so I'm going to go ahead and be merciful to both of us and cut us off there. If you enjoyed the video, maybe hit the like button, and if you found any of Abby's arguments convincing in any way, shape, or form, maybe let me know in the comment section below. If you didn't find any of her arguments convincing, then hey, comment down there and say hi or something. Or if there's any constructive criticism you have for my arguments, then by all means, I'll take that as well. I value all of that. Agreement, disagreement, constructive criticism, I am for every single bit of that. If you really, really enjoyed the video, then maybe consider sharing it with a friend. Maybe you've got a pro-life friend who is really into classically Abby. I know that's a really small niche, but hey, if you have somebody like that, then why not send this video their way? It certainly would help me, and maybe you can help them not try to be a controller of somebody else's body. That all said, if you've made it to this point of the video, you can probably already tell this is my Patreon slides. Or these are my patron slides. These are the people that allow me to do what I do on my channel. They're the ones that largely pay the majority of everything that allows this channel to keep going. So if you like my channel, then these are the people first and foremost to thank for the ability for me to make content and make it at the rate that I do. If you guys want to hang out with me, then I'm going to be doing live streams over on Twitch, but I'm also going to be doing a live stream on my channel, hopefully more than once, where I play League of Legends, but my team will be made of my fans. So if you play League and you want to play with me and you want to hang out, then I'm going to be doing live streams. I'll be announcing when those happen. And if that's a thing you want to do, then awesome. Hop on over on Discord and we will make that happen. But yeah. You guys mentioned, or at least I got some feedback that you guys really liked the unedited, off-the-cuff version of me at the end of videos. So if you guys like that, then cool. I will continue doing this. That all said, I do think that I've let the spark go on as long as I can manage it. So thank you all for watching. As always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.